Hello ladies and gentlemen, as you may know by now, I tend to do a lot of unedited and unscripted rants, but the thing about CHAPPiE is, I didn't necessarily hate the film, but at the same time, I feel the incredible urge to rant about it. So while this is more of a review, at the same time I'm ranting about certain elements within the film. The fact is, I can certainly acknowledge that CHAPPiE has an incredible visual style about it. The visual effects, of course, and the sound design is nothing short of impeccable, and there are several ideas and themes put across in the film. However, it's the handling of such themes, their projection, and ultimately their entire impact on what the greater story is that really bothers me to some end. Maybe I haven't thought it through as much as I should, but after taking time off after watching the film, I can safely say that there is a lot in CHAPPiE that does bother me, despite the fact that there are moments wherein the film really does entice me in a positive way. Now, the fact is that CHAPPiE does have a lot of more subtle themes with regards to, in fact, growing up. As we see CHAPPiE, who is more of a child, if you will, trying to be educated by these parents, having elements there wherein there's commentary on the media exposure that people get, and this large segment where CHAPPiE is trying to be this kind of typical, more stereotypical, if you will, gangster, and he's learning how to use guns, he's being convinced into committing certain crimes, almost thinking about, how people believe that video games sort of inspire people to do these things, or certain forms of media, if you will. But the point is that it's a segment of the film that feels so awkward. It's executed well in terms of the message it puts across, but it's really disjointed. CHAPPiE has a lot of interesting things within it that really don't amount to anything, unfortunately, which is something that bothers me. Furthermore, we get to see CHAPPiE grow up as a child, someone who is more disturbed, for example. There is a mention that CHAPPiE makes of a man in a van that attacked him, and you see almost child trauma, and elements of that come across, but really, it's so strange that when the film goes from A to Z, all that holds almost no relevance to me, at least. And I feel that it threw in elements just to be like, oh, we're addressing this, but it addresses it for a moment. It does definitely have depth within it, but it's not connective depth. Each moment of the film is a deep moment, but the point is it doesn't connect to the next moment in any deep or even basic manner, which creates an imbalance in the film CHAPPiE itself. Furthermore, I do believe that there were characters here and that I wasn't particularly inspired or interested by, especially those of his pseudo-parents, and ultimately the way that arc ends up is way more complicated because there's a strange understanding of motivation that we're expected to back CHAPPiE and, of course, the doctor that really programs CHAPPiE, or the engineer at least. And I found it hard to do that. I found it really hard to root for my protagonist at times because, especially someone who is understanding artificial intelligence and more about artificial intelligence today, I wasn't entirely sold on the idea of CHAPPiE necessarily being the best thing. While certainly more developed, having a thinking mind of its own, I, within the current dystopian almost world, would certainly disagree with having a robot that has its own thinking mind like CHAPPiE. In fact, using the robots as robots themselves, programmed by other working human minds, is something I would be far more for. I did understand that CHAPPiE had more of a soul, but they didn't really do anything with that. They showed that CHAPPiE had a soul, they showed that CHAPPiE got influenced, and they showed that CHAPPiE was like a child growing up, but it really didn't connect in any way. Furthermore, I do feel that there was a much larger message about artificial intelligence in general that could have been pushed forward, especially when certain events occur in the film, certain twists especially do occur, certain characters who are working on this Moose project, if you will, turn and do something else, but ultimately they don't touch on that, and touch on what I believe would have been the most effective themes of the film that would have actually run through relating to the much grander scale of things and about artificial intelligence, about progression, about technology and things like that. Instead, the film boils down to a character's tale, a character of CHAPPiE, who isn't necessarily a character, who's a character that's programmed and is someone that I didn't necessarily root for throughout the film, and a film that did have a lot to offer, a lot of potential, but ultimately did not excite me in any way whatsoever, which is unfortunate because there are a few things to love about CHAPPiE, I will not deny, but ultimately CHAPPIE's own existence becomes its own bane, if you will. It's the very bane of its own existence because of the fact that it is so good at times that it is just the exact opposite. I'm going to give CHAPPiE a double no.